This will be the abstract of a paper I presented to the International Political Science Association in Poznan, Poland in 2016. I've abbreviated and simplified this abstract somewhat, but the general outline of ideas is still retained. The title of this paper and this talk was Individuation of Persons in a Global Rule of Law. This is the abstract. No aspect of the project to construct a global regimen of governance is more important than the legal basis on which it is founded. That basis combines elements of two historic Western traditions, civilian and Anglophone. Proponents of this combination have expected it to provide the advantages of each tradition. That is, the principled predictability of the civilian and the pragmatic adaptability of the Anglophone. However, in reality, one result of this legal convergence is that the English law has come to predominate, to merely subsume methods of the civil law. This is occurring most obviously in the way the English language is coming to be the language of global law. It goes without saying that the language in which a legal regimen is administered has great influence when that law is applied in real life. A second way the new global law is being anglicized is the way in which it is displacing a fixed and explicit philosophical basis of method and purpose. Instead, the new legal regime is coming to rest on the collegial foundation of jurists and practitioners by an evolving consensus among its members. It is sometimes described as being philosophically indeterminate. But there is another tendency as well that touches personally on all members of the global public. It reflects the long historical development of the two traditions and their very different ways of defining and regarding the public that is subject to their authority. Ironically, the two different ways grew out of a religious past. The European civil law followed on Catholic tradition and tends to engage people subjectively as parts of communities or extended families. In the modern secular age, this is manifest in values that are more social or collective in tendency. By contrast, the English common law was deeply influenced by Calvinist Puritanism. The modern law descending from that religion tends to objectify each person as an individuated legal isolate. In fact, this disposition toward the legal public was adopted almost by necessity. As Puritan law developed in 17th century England, its strict punitive measures were widely and vehemently opposed by the public generally. During that period, when the legitimacy of their courts was openly disputed, submission to their law could only be ensured if it was brought to bear on individual persons separated out from the majority. Those single persons were helpless when confronted by a unified hierarchy that had the ability to impose fine or punishment, even death. Over time, what first arose out of necessity came to be celebrated as a virtue. It later gave rise to an ideology of the individual that was embedded in the doctrines of English law and fit within the modern secular world. Unsurprisingly, as a new global law takes on many of the qualities of its historic source, it defines each member of the global population as an insular being. Thus, whether consciously or not, an aged practice ensures that each legally isolated person approaches judicial authority in an attitude of submission. In this way, aged forms of the Anglophone tradition help to establish a global rule of law.